Hey guys, Languagehacker here. Today we got a special video. I'm going to talk about all the cards that are rotating in the big rotation that's going to happen in April. Basically, for those who don't know, every year there is a big rotation where 3 expansions that have come out 2 years ago will rotate. We will have fewer cards available in the pool, and then new expansions will be added throughout the year to add more cards to the pool. So we're going to see a lot of cards that we've been playing with for quite a long time move out of standard. It will still be playable in wild, of course. Now, something that Hearthstone team has added last year was the core set, which means that they can choose, they can hand select some cards to include that will be staying in the core set, basically, that we can use regardless of rotation. So last year they had a core set that seemed probably less impactful than it could have been. However, I believe that now they will start to include some more powerful cards in the core set, so we can build decks around cards that will be around for the rest of the year. So a lot of cards moving out. Some cards might come back into the core sets. We don't know which cards those are going to be until they announce it. So the goal of this video is to kind of show you what cards will be rotating, assuming they're not added to the core set, and ones that we will not be seeing anymore. And because of that, it will impact the classes that those cards were in. So I'm going to be talking about all the classes, what they're losing, what they'll need to continue to be good, and maybe some new directions that they could be, I guess, having with the addition of extra expansions and so on and so forth. I also want to ask you guys a question. Last video, I added a statistical question where I asked you what you guys think is the most frequent win chill target, and you guys seem to like that. So this time, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. First off, what do you guys think is the most common Abominable Lieutenant eat target? Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And then at the end of the video, I will tell you what the answer is, and you guys can see if you guys are correct or not. Also, you should like and comment and subscribe because it helps me. And if you guys like the video and the content that is good, then you guys will get more of my videos in your recommended and whatnot. The second question is going to be, what percentage of the time do you think that Yogg kills the player who played Yogg with Rod of Roasting? You might think it's 50%. Maybe it is, maybe it's not. Put your comments in the comment section below as well. All right, let's hop in the video. Let's talk about what is going to be changing. Now, I have a bunch of decks here for you guys. I have, actually didn't do Demon Hunter. We'll talk about that in a little bit. We have the 9 classes and Demon Hunter. You'll notice that I don't have completed decks here. Now, each class has about 38 cards, I think, rotating. And this is based off of cards that were in Ashes of Outland, Shaman's Academy, and Madness of the Darkmoon Fair. These are the 3 sets that are rotating out, including any related mini sets. And I believe there's 38 cards for each class, except for Demon Hunter, which was an exception. Demon Hunter came in a little late, and a lot of cards that Demon Hunter has access to now is because of, you know, it being so fresh. Its first 3 expansions had to add extra cards to Demon Hunter to make up for the cards that they didn't have already, because the rest of the 9 classes already had cards from the previous expansions and so on and so forth. So Demon Hunter's rotating expansion cards, I think, might be re-added to some extent into the core set, because so many of their cards were just from those initial 3 expansions: Ashes of Outlands, Shaman's Academy, and Madness of the Darkmoon Fair. So I'm actually not exactly sure how Demon Hunter is going to look. I can talk about a few of the cards that are rotating that I think are impactful, but I don't actually believe that they're going to be rotating all of them. I'm hoping they're rotating some of them, but I do expect some of them to remain. Anyways, let's start off with Warlock. So what I'm showing you here is not every single card that's rotating, but I'm showing you cards that I thought were either significant or interesting that are rotating. And this will vary for each class. You can see some classes have included 18, some classes 21, and so on and so forth. This is pretty much subjective. However, I do think I have a pretty good idea of what was impactful and or interesting. So let's start with Warlock. Notable things that are rotating. A bunch of the Soul Fragment package is all gone. Hasn't seen much play recently, but over the course of the past couple of years, it has been pretty relevant, right? We've seen, Yasharar's like Control Warlock with Jiraxis, with Cascading Disasters, Ticketus being included as well, which is also rotating, and that deck did run the Soul package. So that's going to be gone. And the reason I'm including cards like these is not only because, oh, this was a nice deck, you know, a year and something ago, but also when a rotation happens, we have access to much fewer cards, right? 3 expansions go out and 1 expansion comes in. Generally, the rotation happens at the start of an expansion. So because of that, we have 2 expansions less of cards available. Because of that, decks tend to be more limited, and cards that have obvious synergies like this, like the Soul package, eventually ended up becoming, I wouldn't say obsolete, but obsolete. And when a rotation happens, you'll be playing with lower power level cards, so you have much fewer options in what you're doing, and because of that, obvious synergies like the Soul Fragment package could automatically be included. So the fact that this is rotating means that after rotation, you can't just throw in the Soul Fragment package and have like a kind of a control Warlock from that. And that kind of thinking will carry forward to the other decks as well. Paladin is another one that is notably like that. Anyways, Soul Fragments are gone. Matron, Hand of Gul'dan, we saw this combo kind of pop up in generally aggressive decks, but it was used in Fatigue Warlock for a little bit as well, and it was also used in D6, the 6-demon Warlock with Sealer of Souls before that got changed. Hysteria, a very notable card as well from the Scholomance mini set. Very, very good tool. Not seeing too much play right now, but it saw so much play for so long. Raise Dead is a card that has been used basically in its entire lifespan, and that together with Flesh Giant we've seen in a very recent iteration, a relatively recent iteration with Questline Warlock. Freed Mission didn't see a crazy amount of play, but it was really good in the decks that it did end up seeing play. Generally card draw and specific tutoring card draws is good as well, drawing 2 minions, and especially in D6 this shined a lot. It was running a little bit in aggro as well, and I think it saw some play in some weird combo decks that weren't D6, but it wasn't as good. Backfire is rotating as well. Generally card draw is good to note when it's rotating, because card draw is really important in decks that are not it's important in decks in general. Dark Portal wasn't like super nutty, but it still saw play. D6, it allowed for Takeadist style combos. It was a playable card. We saw it in, I think, old Quest Warlock 2 when we were running the previous quest, so not Questline Warlock, but we used to run this with Malagos and what was the quest called? I don't remember what this quest was called, but basically you draw 20 cards and then your tap still costs 2, but it makes your card 0. And we used to run Dark Portal in that to draw Malagos more consistently for like an OTK type thing. Rustwix, Prime Warlock was super, super fun. Not quite as impactful as some of these other cards, but God, was it so fun to play Prime Warlock, which was also with that old quest. Void Drinker as part of the Soul Fragment package. Keladon used to be really good in that deck as well, the Prime Warlock. Again, we're not seeing it anymore. And that's kind of it for Warlock. So it might not seem too crazy, because a lot of cards that we're seeing now are not rotating. They're still going to be included. For example, in Owl Warlock, I think most of those cards are staying, and obviously School Spirits is rotating, but a lot of the other cards are still intact. That's Warlock. Next up, Shaman. Shaman has quite a few cards. Some of these are not quite as impactful, but I think they did have some niches, so I did want to include them. Bloom is a big one. You won't be Bloom Caverns anymore on curve against Burn Shaman. Devolving Missiles, we don't see too much play right now, but having transform effects for cheap is very, very important. It is also an arcane spell which does work with multicast right now, so that's something that we would not be seeing as much post-rotation. Notably, Studies is also going away, again for Burn Shaman, but even for general multicaster synergies, losing access to arcane spells is kind of big. Guidance by itself isn't too big, but a lot of quest line decks will likely stick around post rotation, and because of that, I think it was worth noting that Guidance is not going to be available to run in Quest Shaman. This was a staple in Questline Shaman, and that's going away. Custodian saw playing a lot of weapon decks, Elemental Shaman in particular with Doomhammer, but also people used to use it to run to draw Whack-A-Null Hammer. So just in general, this was a pretty solid card. And Evolved Shaman was another thing that this was really good in. Tutor the weapon, that's important. Note Taker, pretty solid. Seeing less play now than I used to, but still pretty relevant, I'd say. Phoenix itself hasn't been run in many decks. It's been included in some tech cards, but yeah, this is also notable because a lot of spell damage stuff is going away, which again, Burn Shaman probably is going to look very, very different if it still exists post-rotation. Landslide, pretty good tool. Wasn't running in a lot of different decks, but when it was being used, God, was it abused quite nicely, and that's one of the reasons why Burn Shaman is so good right now. Being able to just wipe out aggressive board decks with Landslide. Fireheart, a staple in almost every single Shaman deck. Actually, almost every single Shaman deck has run Fireheart, and it's been insane. So loss of Fireheart is going to hurt Shaman's high roll potential. Vosh is actually kind of okay. I wasn't sure to include this or not. I don't need to include like a specific number of cards, but Vosh was kind of a cool card as far as primes go. Some of the primes weren't super great, but I think Vosh was, acceptable enough. A lot of these are just like primordial studies outcomes, which also isn't relevant because Study is going away, so maybe I could take Vosh away, but I thought Vosh was a cool prime. Marshspawn hasn't really seen play, but again, when we're going after a post-rotation format, we're going to have fewer cards available, and something like a Marshspawn could have seen play, but that's not going to be there anymore. Portal was pretty standard in a lot of decks as well. We're not going to see that. Ghidra, less common, but still an acceptable card. Stormstrike for Doomhammer. Doomhammer, I believe, is still sticking in the core set unless they change that, and Stormstrike was pretty important for that. Rockbiter is a good damage output, but losing Stormstrike limits the amount of burn available in that kind of deck. Talked about Whack-A-Null. Dunk Tank and Boneless Shaman specifically, that's going to be gone. And another, I'll talk about a few other cards that are going away as well, but Dunk Tank in particular means that you can't really run Yashraj. Although Yashraj is rotating as well, so like, Torrent saw some play recently, pretty efficient. I think it was in a Molnar type list, where you kind of Giga Cycle your deck, and this becomes a 1-mana nature spell to proc multicaster, and it draws, it is drawn off of Dungeoneer as well. Bog Spine Knuckles is gone. Evolve Shaman, RIP. Maybe something else gets printed. Maybe not a weapon, but some other Evolve support. Inara hasn't been seen in a while, but again, very, very strong, and it was a staple for quite a bit of time in aggressive Shaman lists. And once again, that with Stormstrike being gone will cause Shaman to lose some damage. Lurker Below, pretty niche card, but was a pretty cool effect. And that's kind of it for Shaman. Next up, Rogue. Rogue loses some stuff that I'm very happy to see go. Let's talk about it. Secret Package is gone. Hasn't been run in a while, but it was a staple. I wasn't say a staple, actually. It was an archetype for quite a bit. Stunner, Ambush, Dirty Tricks, Hanar. Losing Plunderer finally. Brain Freeze is a pretty big loss as well. Tempo classes losing Tempo Tools is generally pretty bad. We haven't seen Stealth Rogue in quite a while, but it was popping around for a little bit. Spy Mirror, even without the Stealth archetype, 1-mana 3/1 with Stealth is pretty good for an aggressive type deck. I also included Ash Tongue and Greyheart for the same purposes. Self-Sharpening Sword is gone, which makes Weapon Rogue a little bit less consistent, but Swine Tusk Shank is still alive and kicking. Cutting Class is gone. Very happy to see that. That will be a hit to Weapon Rogue. Cloak is also gone. Hit to Weapon Rogue as well. Steel Dancer was more of a tech choice a while back, but I included it because it was a cool card. Janus is gone. Haven't seen much of Janus, but power level in general will go down, which means that cards like Janus would see more play post-rotation. That's not going to be available. Tenwu was really cool for a very long time. Alex combos, you can do it with Smite as well. At some point, that was an option. And even just reducing the consistency of questline Rogue right now, balancing extra SI stuff. And my favorite, Passage is gone. God, I absolutely loathe this card. This is abysmal. It was nerfed once, and I still have been calling for a nerf ever since it was changed still, because I think this card is just way too illegal, and it is absurd to me that this has existed until rotation in its current state. Granted, it was printed as 1-mana replaced with 5, but even at 1-mana replaced with 4, I think this was just absurdly powerful. So happy to see this gone. Don't you dare add this to the core set. Wand Thief being gone, same thing. Post-rotation, power level goes down in general, so having stuff like Wand Thief available would be pretty good, but Wand Thief's going to be gone. I think I said Proxy Fraud's gone too. I think we've covered everything here. Cool. Next up, Priest. A lot of interesting Priest cards are gone. Raise Dead. Control Priest is going to have a harder time getting value out with that. Also, Draconic Studies. Freshman's going to be gone, mostly for just aggro decks and Inner Fire Priest. Although we haven't really seen Inner Fire Priest. But still, 1-mana 1/4 is still pretty good. So notable that that leaves. Shadow Priest, I think, is still a thing. We're still going to have Benedictus. So it is something that Priest does lose. Insight's been used for a while in Miracle Priest. Miracle Priest loses like everything, right? Nazmani's gone, Sethic's gone, Palm Reading, Insight, all of these are gone, Rally. So Miracle Priest will no longer exist, at least in its current form. Gambling was used for a little bit in Shadow Priest, which was pretty cool. I thought that was probably notable. Soul Mirror is gone. If we start going more towards a board-centric meta, which the devs have said that they will try to push for something like that, Soul Mirror being gone is a big thing. Nameless one was kind of cool. Saw some play as a tech card, but didn't see general play outside of that. I still wanted to include it. Mind Render, no longer relevant, but was, oh my god, this haunted the meta for so long. I thought that was notably included. Gift is gone as well. Appo's not really played that much right now, but it was pretty important earlier. Powered Feast, not super great, but still kind of a pretty solid card for an aggressive type deck. Renew is also a huge card to note that is leaving, because Renew is just such a staple. I think this is played in every single Priest deck without exception. Except for, there's an exception, Shadow Priest. But Renew is just such a good card. I think that's it for Priest. Okay. Paladin. I noted that this was... You'll notice that... This is funny. Hacker. Why are there so few notable Paladin cards? Well, that's because there's a lot of... cards that just don't do anything in Paladin. There's a lot of low impact cards that just are not good enough to run or worth noting that are rotating. Paladin has been carried by the Libram package ever since the Libram package came out, and it's very, very hard for Paladin to actually have other decks. Buff Paladins existed for a little bit, but they were running a lot of neutral cards and just some standalone buffs. So like, I don't know what to tell you. There weren't that many notable Paladin cards. So all the Libram cards are here. Omayog was actually pretty annoying for quite a long time, and Secret Paladin was a thing. Some of the other secret cards are still in, like sort of the... whatever it's called. Sort of the Fallen, the 3-mana 3/4, the Northwatch Commander still in, but Omayog is gone. We might see a secret sort of package come back next expansion, but Omayog will not be included in that. Hand of Adal. Really, really good card, staple in all the Paladin decks, I think without exception. Murger was really good as well. This is one of the better primes, just because Paladin lacked a lot of 2-drops, and this gave you something to use. Maybe not in Libram Paladin. We've seen it in Libram Paladin as well, but in Buff Paladin in particular, having an extra, like having a 2-mana play was good, because you didn't have too many. If you didn't have your 1-drop into buff, you needed some sort of follow-up. Goody 2 Shield saw some play. I thought it was worth including because, again, power level being... dropped post-rotation, something like this could absolutely see play, and that's going to be gone. Barov and Justice are both gone, so Paladin loses some of its board clears. I think Samro's still in, but it's going to be harder to use. It's just going to be harder to have a board clear in general. Blessing Authority I thought was notable as well, because it was used in Buff Paladin. Not in Librams, but it was one of the reasons why Buff Paladin just kind of ran over some decks. Liadrin as well, part of the package of Librams, but theoretically you could run this in like a Buff Paladin as well. Pupil as well. I've been saying as well a lot, but I mean, a lot of this was just buff style Paladin, which is very limited in how it can be built, either more aggressive or Libram. So a lot of these cards hit both of those archetypes. All right, next up, Mage. Mage is an interesting one. Mage loses a lot of stuff, and this is I was a little flexible with what I included here because some cards definitely don't see play anymore, but I think some cards are notable. So, Brain Freeze Missiles, we talked about this. Brain Freeze was just a really good card. It doesn't matter if it's in Rogue or in Mage, pretty good. Devolving, same thing. Whether or not we're seeing it a lot now, it's still a very flexible, important transform effect. Font of Power, Apexis Blast, Flow, Lunacy, all of these are rotating. Mazaki's gone as well, so Spell Mage, less good. Mazaki Mage, gone, unless it gets added to the core set. Jandis, notably leaving as well for tempo purposes. Solarian was a really cool prime for a long time. Wand Thief, Flexibility's gone. Studies Cram Session, both gone. So some card draw consistency is going to be gone. Refreshing Springwater still in. Arcane Intellect still in. Biscuit, I included this. It's part of Mazaki. It probably won't see... It probably wouldn't have seen play if Mazaki rotates anyways. Starscry I wanted to include because Ping Mage could become a bit more popular after rotation. Again, power level goes down, so decks like Ping Mage can start thriving a bit more. And Starscry did add some consistency with that deck because it is some targeted card draw. Evo is gone. Once again, power level going down. A card like this could be very, very good at just adding resources that you can't normally run to your deck. Firebrand, same thing. 3-mana 3/4. With upside is really good post-rotation. That won't be there. Secrets are gone. You wouldn't normally run these in your deck, but they are cards that you could, you know, randomly pull from secrets. I think Ring Toss is leaving too. Notably, the secret package in general could have been an option. If we see some stuff like, what was the 2-mana 2/3? Medivh's Valet maybe could see a reappearance. Maybe Secret Mage gets pushed, and having fewer secrets to worry about is, I guess, something to consider. I included Ivory. Ivory was a cool card. I didn't include it in a Rogue, but once again, value sort of decks could run something like this, and this is going to be gone. Ras, good in a spell damage deck. We did see spell damage Mage for a little bit last year. and that's just not going to be a thing. Like, everything it has is rotating. And finally, Masculine. This is rotating. This wasn't really a staple, but it is being run right now in Ping Mages as an extra school spell to get back with Magister and Dawn Grasp, the hero, and with Multicaster. So having this go does mean that Ping Mage loses some of its game-ending potential. Magister Dawn Grasp still can let you kind of ramp up your hero power and win the game, but Massive Cthulhu really lets you kill some decks that you otherwise couldn't beat. A couple more to go. Let's go Hunter. Hunter loses some interesting stuff. I also struggled to add important cards here because most Hunter decks were really face Hunters in terms of how prominent it was. Recently, we've been having Quest Hunter pop up as well, so I'm going to talk a bit about that. And there has been some Big Beast Hunter, sorry, not Druid. Big Beast Hunter is kicking, but honestly, Big Beast Hunter seems kind of meh. It might be a bit more playable post-rotation. All right, Adorable Infestation, huge loss. Very good for tempo decks. Demon Companion as well. Trim Crescent, Wolpertinger, all cards that we've seen in Face Hunter. Felmaw hasn't been played for a while, but it was a pretty good option at the time. Rifle, pretty big staple in, I think, every single Hunter deck. Rhino's gone for aggressive stuff as well. Death Rattle loses Tonk, Beastmaster, Drew. Actually, this wasn't a Death Rattle. This is more of an OTK, but this was kind of cool as well, getting King Crush 3 times. Jewel's gone. Petting Zoo. We do have Dunboldar Bunker still, and some secrets. So something like Petting Zoo could have seen play post-rotation if it wasn't rotating. For Quest Hunter, Overwhelm is a big one. Having 1 mana spells to progress the quest is very important. That's going to be gone. Bowl Shot also very good at controlling the board against aggressive decks. That's going to be gone as well. Pouch for some flexibility is gone, although I don't think this was that important in most decks. And Carrion Studies as well for the Death Rattle package. Slate's gone as well. Slate has been seeing some more play with Drekthar Hunter recently. In Quest, well, Drekthar in Quest Hunter, but other iterations of the list kind of cut it. Yeah, so Face Hunter gets a bit worse, but not that worse. Compared to how much other stuff we're losing, Face Hunter is probably going to be a pretty playable deck post-rotation. All right, Warrior and Druid. Let me take a sip, because I've been speaking for a while. Oof. Warrior loses a lot in a couple different archetypes. Athletic Studies, you might say, is not that great of a card, but again, power level going down. Rotation will... would have allowed something like this to see play, and it's flexible. Ganargon, nutty card. If there was an aggressive warrior, this would be played in it post-rotation. Stage Dive for consistency. Generally, card draw that is rotating for decks like decks that have control vibes to them is very important, because part of the reason you can play a control deck is having enough card draw to support your removal. So Stage Dive is going to be gone. Corsair Crest is a huge one that's going to be gone. It's going to limit a lot of consistency that Warrior can have. Bulwark 2 is going to be gone. Cutting Class notably as well, and that's it for card draw there. Sword Eater hasn't seen play in a while, but it was such a good card, and this probably would have seen play if it wasn't rotating. Kargath is just a personal favorite, not particularly nutty, but I liked playing him. You'll notice some removal is gone. Sword and Board, Minefield, Bladestorm, Course. Control decks are kind of built around how their removal works. So we'll have to see what gets added next expansion, or what gets reshuffled into the core set to see what Control Warrior is going to look like if it exists post-rotation. Krasnov, not really that relevant, but I wanted to include it because it was kind of a cool card. Watley is a card that we saw a little bit of with Rush Warrior, or Arena Warrior as you want to call it. And once again, I can't stress this enough. Power level going down. Mediocre to acceptable cards would see more play, but these are going to be gone. Brute was around for a while, not really included anymore, and Rage Warrior ran this a lot. In terms of Big Warrior, Troublemaker and Commencement's gone, so that archetype probably starts dying. Cowardly Grunt I still believe is in, but I don't think that's enough to support the archetype. And Rattlegore, one of my favorite cards ever, is going to be gone as well. Now, Rattlegore hasn't been really playable for a while, but when it was playable, oof, it was fun. All right. Second last, let's talk about Druid. Druid loses so much, it's absurd. Bloom, gone. Aggressive archetypes will lose. Adorable Infestation, Studies is basically every single deck. That's gone. Pouch, a lot more limited ramp options. Guess the Wait for card draw. Fungal Fortunes for card draw. Lunar Eclipse for removal. Bogging for removal. Solar Eclipse for value and just nutty stuff. Ironbark gone. that's seeing some play as well. Dreaming Drake, not as relevant, but why did I include this? Whatever, you're here now. Moon Touch for survivability and damage output. Yashraj is also leaving, so that's an archetype that's gone. Gidra hasn't been seeing much play now, but it was pretty popular earlier. Overgrowth gone. Arbor up. Glowfly. All these staple cards are just gone. Umbral Owl. Cenarian Ward no longer gaining 16 with the Solar. Survival gone. Celestial Alignment still sticks around, but some of its win conditions are starting to evaporate. GA, not seeing much play now, but it was very popular for a very long time. Also, Teacher's Pet and Twilight Run is rotating, but I only wanted to include one of those cards because Druid's already losing so much. I didn't have space to include here. Yeah. Greybow in aggressive archetype saw some play with Taunt Druid. Yeah, Druid loses so much, it's insane. I imagine it's going to have some sort of extra ramp card printed. I was thinking maybe something along the lines of Greedy Sprite. That's a wild card. For those who don't know, I'll bring it up. Convert to wild. Death Rattle getting an empty mana crystal. I thought something like this could end up seeing more play. Maybe not this exact card being added to the core set, but I imagine some sort of ramp card will be included to help Druid make up for what it's losing. Alternatively, we could see them not do that at all and just say, you know what? Druid's not ramping anymore. Have fun with your wild growth and your innervates, and then maybe it's just more mid-rangey / aggressive archetypes. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. I think they will want to print something for Druid ramp-wise, but Druid is losing a lot. Overgrowth and core set? Oh god, don't give them ideas, please. Don't give them ideas. So, we've talked about 9 classes. I mentioned at the start that Demon Hunter is a little bit of a corner case here because a lot of Demon Hunter's available cards came from its first 3 sets. In Ashes of Outlands, Sholomance Academy, and Menace of the Darkmoon Fair. So Demon Hunter, I can talk about which cards are, in air quotes, rotating, but I imagine a large number of these cards actually won't rotate. So Sidra Runner's gone, Demon Companion's gone, Double Jump, Spectral Sight, Skull, all of their nutty card draw is gone. Studies would be gone as well. They just lose so much of their repertoire that I don't think... I don't think they're going to remove them. Immolation, or like, there's so many cards, it's absurd. Basically any deck that exists right now probably wouldn't exist. To give you an idea of just how much is leaving because of when the cards are printed. So I think a large number of those cards will be either introduced to the core set, or they'll maybe continue to add extra cards for Demon Hunter post rotation. But my guess is they want to add the same number of cards as other stuff, kind of standardize how many cards each class gets, and then start adding some stuff to the core set. Okay. What do I want to see? I want to see some non-abuse-able ramp in Druid. I don't want to see Bloom. I don't want to see Overgrowth, but some light ramp there. Warrior's going to need some new control tools, maybe some sort of aggressive variation as well. Because, I mean, people always hate Control Warrior. I love Control Warrior, but I imagine maybe some sort of mid-rangey thing, kind of like Rush Warrior we had a year or so ago, could see some play. Face Hunter probably doesn't lose enough to not see play anymore, but we'll need some new face archetypes. I also expect to see some sort of slow Hunter being pushed, because they love to do that. Mage is interesting. I feel like they might try to push Wildfire or like Ping Mage a bit more. We haven't seen like hero power stuff outside of Wildfire since like TGT. So that is actually, that's not true. We did have like Jan'alai and odd mage, and or not odd mage, just odd and even decks in general with Baku and Gen. What if they reintroduce those? That could be interesting. Anyways, I digress. I kind of want to see control the mage archetype, which I think they are pushing with kind of Drake Fire amulets. I imagine that space is going to be a bit explored a bit more. Paladin is going to need a whole lot of cards to be playable, because right now Paladin is barely playable in standard and it loses like its most important cards. So I expect to see a lot of Paladin stuff pop up. We might see something like a secret package brought back in, because I talked about the weapon still being included, the Sword of the Fallen, and Northwatch Commando is still there. So I imagine a secret variant could pop up. Maybe another sort of buff Paladin could exist. There are still some buff cards, but they might need a couple of extra ones, and that might still see play. Priest, I imagine they're not going to do another Miracle rework. I think they're just going to leave that off for now. Maybe go for another sort of control archetype, but maybe not as aggressive on the generation. We probably won't see stuff like Raised Dead and Draconic Studies. I think there still will be some Discover available, but not quite as much as existed before. Rogue, I don't even know what to say. Every time they print Rogue cards, I get upset, so I'll just let them handle that. Shaman needs some help, I think. Aggressive Shaman loses some stuff. I talked about some burn cards are going to be gone. There are still a lot of elementals left, so an elemental Shaman absolutely still exists, but they might need a bit more in terms of finishing power. And Fireheart being gone is kind of a big deal as well in general. We'll see. Rukon could allow for some control style archetypes, and they have printed some cards in the most recent set with like Don't Stand in the Fire and the Embrace the Cold, I think it's called. Yeah, Embracing Cold. So Control Shaman could see some sort of rise, maybe not to power, but some rise. Warlock's just going to be good in general because Warlock hero power is the nuts, but we'll see what kind of tools they give us for that. We do kind of need some win conditions. Owlock will still exist, but it'll have to be changed a little bit because Backfire is gone and School Spirits are gone, and School Spirits was on the way to kill off the Wicked Shipment demons. So I still expect to see some Owl Warlock, but maybe it looks a bit different, a bit slower. I also want to talk about some notable neutral cards. I forgot to build a neutral card deck. Professional streamer, by the way, / content creator, but I do have them here. And let me just read out some names. There actually weren't that many neutral cards that were impactful, but the ones that I wanted to highlight are McThernan. Saw quite a bit of play in Demon Hunter, specifically Quest FLDH. Although I have seen it before in, we saw it in Quest Mage for a little bit. We saw it in Charge Warrior. I saw some people playing it on ladder recently. It was a really cool card. Ogremancer was a nice tech card back when we were playing, you know, just spell decks, and then it was back in Rush Warrior days when we didn't have access to that many cards. Ogremancer was actually pretty acceptable. Moonfang saw a lot of play. That's going as well. Cthulhu, Yogg, and Yashraj are all rotating. Those are pretty, I'd say, like, notable cards in terms of power level, because Yogg and Yashraj are running quite a few decks. Cthulhu saw a bit of play, but not as much as the other old gods. But just the flavor, you know, that those being gone is gonna be a big thing. And I think that's all the main ones I wanted to talk about. So that's a lot of stuff rotating. I'm very excited to see what core set's going to look like. I'm very, very curious how they're going to mix things up, how they're going to look at the Demon Hunter thing. And I'm very excited just for a bunch of these cards to rotate, because we've had them for 2 years, and it's going to be fun to have new cards to play with and a fresh meta, hopefully more board centric. Now, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, regardless of whether or not you enjoyed the video. It does help a lot. If you have feedback, feel free to, you know, comment in the comment section. And now I will give you guys the answer to the 2 questions I posed at the start of the video. First off, what percentage of the time does, what is the most frequent target for Abominable Lieutenant to eat? And the answer is Abominable Lieutenant. Now, as a reminder, these stats were pulled from a mini set launch, so 15th February to the end of the month. So it's a little bit delayed, but at that time, Abominable Lieutenant, 8 other Abominable Lieutenants, wait, where is it? 4% of the time, which doesn't seem like a crazy high amount, but notable, right? It's funny that Abominable Lieutenant eats Abominable Lieutenant most of the time. Second place was Kazakhstan, which makes sense because Kazakhstan became a bit more popular. And third was an Onyxian Whelp, which tells you that a lot of druids were being played against druids on ladder, because the top 3 cards are cards that you would see in mainly druid decks, let's be honest. So it's kind of fun. And the other question was what percentage of the time does Yogg kill the player that plays Yogg with Rod of Roasting? Now you might think it's about 50%, but there are cases where that's not true. And because that, it's skewing the numbers a little. I wouldn't say skewing, but it does change it, because Yogg is not always played in a position where it is an equal chance for both players to die. Generally, Yogg can be played a lot of the time when the Druid has exhausted other available resources. You know, they played their Solar Cenarians against, I don't know, a control deck or the Mirror, and all they have left to do is just play Yogg. So when they play Yogg, they could either have very low health totals against aggro, or crazy high health totals, like 40 armor or something. So the answer is 52% of the time. When Yogg is played and Rod of Roasting is the selected outcome, the player playing it dies 52% of the time, which makes sense. Most of the time you'll be playing Yogg in positions that you expect not to win the game, which tends to be cases where you have lower health than your opponent, where you're getting smorked or you're at a disadvantage. So because of that, you'll on average have slightly less health than your opponent, which means that Rod of Roasting will kill you slightly more often than it kills your opponent. Hope you guys like those facts. Again, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys want to see out of the core set. Let me know what you guys think of my predictions in terms of what could be added. And keep an eye out for videos that I'll be posting as more is released about the core set. I'll be talking about all the core set changes once they are announced. I'll be talking about expansion card reveals and stuff that are coming out and giving you guys reviews of what I think about them. Have a wonderful day. Hope to see you guys next time.